Hello again. Last week I spoke about the importance of the date. It was St. George's Day and quite possibly also Shakespeare's birthday and incidentally my sister's birthday. Today, on the surface of it, is a less important date, even though I've just discovered it is in fact the UNESCO International Jazz Day. But it's also the 100th birthday of Captain Tom Moore. You probably wouldn't have heard of him just a few weeks ago, and I certainly hadn't, but I expect you will have heard of him now. He's been walking round his garden aiming for 100 laps before his 100th birthday to raise money for NHS charities. And he's exceeded his target of laps and hugely exceeded his early fundraising target of £1,000, and he's rapidly heading towards £30 million. It's an amazing achievement, of course, and people have been very generous. But there are a couple of things in this story which bother me slightly. One is a very political one about what it means to support the NHS with charity money rather than taxes. And the other is about the way that stories are being told. It seems to have become important that he is Captain Tom and that he is a war veteran. I've tried to look back to the earliest stories about his walk, and I think it may be the case that at the beginning he was simply Tom. But then the journalists and the military seemed to get wind of the war veteran bit, and so more and more he became Captain Tom and was photographed with his medals. There's a story that we are being told. Now, of course, it's not a made-up story. He's not pretending to be a captain. But I do wonder how often he was known as Captain Tom Moore before these last few weeks. And for some reason, this is now the story. This is the definition of the man. He is a war veteran with the rank of captain. If you are a war veteran, of course, you have lived through something which has had a great impact in your life, and for many people, a hugely traumatic impact. But it might also be something which gives life meaning in a more positive way. So it's not surprising, perhaps, that military service becomes an important part of the story of who someone is. The story that's told about them, or the story they tell other people about themselves, or even the story they tell themselves about who they are. What are the stories we tell ourselves? Who are we? What do we define ourselves by? For many people, the places we start are jobs and family relationships. I'm defined by my career or by my family. But that's only part of the story. We can tell our stories in different ways. We can draw out different emphases. Here's a little exercise. If you're more of a visual person, you could try drawing a picture of your story, a kind of timeline, or a map of a river or something, for example. Where are the high points? The times where you felt really good. Times when you felt things were going really well. And where are the low points? Where are the hard times? And where was God in all of that? Where did you find yourself closest to God? And where did you find that God felt far away or not a big part of your life? Times when you weren't aware of God's presence. I did that exercise some years ago now. My visual world is not very imaginative, so I didn't know where to start in drawing my life as a river. So I drew a graph instead. It's more my kind of thing. But however you might draw it, think about giving it a go. It can be quite an instructive exercise. Thinking about our stories and how we tell them has been a key theme for our Methodist president and vice president of conference this year. They wrote a book called So What's the Story, which is billed as a resource book for Christian reflection and practice. There's plenty in there to help us, and I hope we can continue to explore this whole idea of telling our stories. That phrase, telling our stories, has a couple of different meanings. It's telling the stories of us, what defines us, what makes us who we are, how we build our memories by telling our own story. But telling our stories can also mean telling the stories that belong to us. The stories of our communities, the stories of our faith, most obviously, of course, as found in the Bible. And in exploring how all these stories talk to each other, exploring how all these stories come together in us, can be very fulfilling. Who knows at this stage what stories there are that we might tell about these weeks and months. But we are already starting to tell some stories, to build the memories, starting to frame the ways we think about what's going on. And I wonder, how do our own personal stories fit, and how will they fit with those stories of our communities and the stories of our faith, the stories of God? One of the stories of these times is that little snippet of the story of Captain Tom Moore. So, happy birthday, Tom. And let's continue to tell his story. And let's continue to tell the story of the NHS, which has become a defining story of our nation. And since the political story is really the story of how we work out how to live in community together, let's play our part in where that story goes from here. So I'd encourage you to have a go at drawing your story and how it fits with faith. Oh, I nearly forgot. UNESCO International Jazz Day. Follow the link for another music recommendation. God bless. See you soon.